So if you're not already familiar of what a butterfly effect is, it basically means that one small decision can change the entire course of time itself. And throughout NFL history, there is a ton of examples of butterfly effects that could have and did change NFL history for better or for worse. So hopefully you enjoy these somewhat minute details that turned out to change the entirety of NFL history forever. So as of recently, Jim Harbaugh has been buzzed around as a potential head coach for teams like the Raiders and Vikings, and his name was brought back into the light. But what most people don't know about Jim Harbaugh is he was actually an NFL player, and a pretty good quarterback for a while. Harbaugh was always given off as a hard-working, tough quarterback, someone who you could count on, but wasn't really going to wow you with any talent. So let's go all the way back to 1997, where Jim Harbaugh is quarterbacking the Indianapolis Colts with youngsters Marvin Harrison and Marshall Faulk on the team. So this team was expected to do pretty well, but they ended up going 0-7 through their first 7 games, losing every single one of them, not by many points, but they still lost every single one. So naturally the blame is going to go to the quarterback, and the media, as well as just general fans, were blaming Harbaugh for pretty much everything. And at 0-7, the Colts were projected to have the #1 pick, and in this upcoming draft there was 2 pretty enticing quarterback prospects, one being the great Ryan Leaf and the other being some guy named Peyton Manning. So I'm sure the Colts organization was thinking about that at the time, but Jim Harbaugh took matters into his own hands. And this will be important later on, but Bills quarterback Jim Kelly had just retired from the NFL and had become a full-time media man. And he was not impressed with Harbaugh's start as the quarterback of the Colts. He was ripping him apart, calling him garbage, calling him trash. He couldn't throw this many touchdowns without throwing this many picks. The man was just hating on him like an average media man does. And Harbaugh could take all that criticism, but it wasn't until Jim Kelly decided to call him soft was when he decided to take things personally. Jim Harbaugh could take all the criticism he wanted, but when you questioned his toughness, he wanted to fight back. And for better or worse, that's exactly what he did. As Jim Harbaugh was dealing with an injury after week 7, so he wasn't going to play in their next game. So Jim Kelly, the media man, had to interview the new Colts quarterback and see what was going on with the potential season. You know, ask him basic interview media guy questions. Now what Jim Kelly probably didn't expect is that Jim Harbaugh would show up anyways and try to fight Jim Kelly, a retired old media man, trying to physically attack him. Now Kelly was clearly struck off guard by Harbaugh even being there, but I'm sure he was even more surprised when the man started swinging at him. Now Kelly swears to this day that Harbaugh never hit him, but I don't think that's true because Jim Harbaugh ended up breaking his hand after throwing punches at him. And this is where the first domino falls. Because with Jim Harbaugh breaking his hand on Jim Kelly presumably, he misses the next 3 games which they all lose. And if they had won one of those games with Jim Harbaugh there, then they would not have had the lottery odds to get the first overall pick in the 1998 NFL draft. And you know who they took in 1998. So that's the butterfly effect to a T. Jim Harbaugh punching Jim Kelly in the mouth during an interview leads to Peyton Manning becoming a Colt and ultimately bringing them a championship. So this next effect is more of a fun one, and kind of speculation, but still makes sense in the end. Everyone knows that at one point in his career, Drew Brees was a questionable quarterback that had an uncertain future due to his injuries. But what you might not know is how he was injured. As in 2005, Broncos safety John Lynch was able to sack Drew Brees and badly injure his shoulder. So teams were speculating on whether to take a chance on Drew Brees and decide whether his injuries were actually worth taking the risk. One of the teams that were deciding on whether to take a chance on Drew Brees or not were the Miami Dolphins, who were led by head coach Nick Sabban, and they really needed a quarterback. Like, seriously, they had damn near no quarterbacks at all. The 2 quarterbacks they were looking at were Drew Brees and Dante Culpepper. So in arguably one of the greatest consequential decisions on which quarterback is better, Nick Sabban and the Miami Dolphins decided that Drew Brees' injuries were too much of a concern and he was not worth the risk. So that means that the Dolphins went ahead and signed Dante Culpepper. Drew Brees ended up signing with the Saints and they won a Super Bowl and everyone's happy, woohoo, the end. But the Saints part of this doesn't really matter because with Dante Culpepper leading the Dolphins, they didn't do anything at all. And because of Dante Culpepper's underwhelming status, this would lead Nick Sabban, the mastermind of football himself, to leave Miami and the NFL as a whole and never come back. He ended up going to Alabama, and that started a whole thing there in college. They're a powerhouse, if you didn't know that. So you gotta wonder, what if the Dolphins decided to take a chance on Drew Brees and not go with the older Dante Culpepper? what would have happened to the league as we know it? Would Drew Brees have won multiple championships with the Dolphins? Would Alabama never have been a college national powerhouse? I guess we'll never know, but with this next butterfly effect, this one definitely has the deepest and most intricate reasonings and effects behind it. Okay, so strap in, because this is one hell of a rabbit hole, and we might need to stretch things out a little bit just to make things make more sense. So take yourself back to the 1968 NFL season, where the Buffalo Bills are the worst team in football, but they're tied for the worst team in football with the Eagles at the time. Both teams were unintentionally or intentionally trying to lose maybe more games so they could have the #1 overall player in the next draft, O.J. Simpson. And after getting away with a few wins here and there, the two teams had about the same record, and whoever loses more games would get the first overall pick. And the Bills had some close losses, so just if the ball bounced a little different here and there, then maybe the Eagles would have gotten the #1 pick. For the record, the Eagles were the worst team in the NFL through 11 games, as they were 0-11, then they won 2 in a row and started destroying their tank. But even if the Eagles started to lose more games, it wouldn't have mattered, because in the last game of the year, that was the famous game where they decided to pelt snowballs at Santa Claus, so I guess it didn't really matter in the end. Anyway, because the Bills lost one of those games just by a mere 3 points, that led to them landing the #1 overall pick in O.J. Simpson. And he was pretty good at football for the most part. He won an MVP, made the Hall of Fame, 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, 1-time Murder. But with O.J. in Buffalo, you can only help to imagine that maybe that situation doesn't happen at one point in his life. And this is where the stretch comes in, because if you want to go that far, then you might as well say that if that doesn't happen, then he doesn't have his lawyer to help him in court, who ended up being Robert Kardashian. And without O.J. Simpson having a controversial case, then maybe the Kardashians never come to be in modern culture. Now, that one was a little bit of more speculation and a little bit more fun, but let's go back to a trade that actually almost happened and would have changed history forever. So in 2007, there was a very strong rumor that Randy Moss, who was at the time a Raider, would be traded for Aaron Rodgers. And I know it didn't actually happen, but the domino effect that would have came from that trade would have been massive. As with Aaron Rodgers now, the Raiders would have not taken Jamarcus Russell first overall because they would have had Aaron Rodgers, so instead they would take Calvin Johnson first overall, forever altering the franchise's outlook. And I think unfortunately this means that the Lions take Jamarcus Russell, so ooh. But I also think that this potential new pairing with Aaron Rodgers and Calvin Johnson would have been absolutely dominant, and I think they do win a few Super Bowls down the road. But look at the repercussions of this trade around the league. As the Green Bay Packers without Aaron Rodgers to back up Brett Favre, I think that Favre would end up staying a Green Bay Packer for life and would probably win a championship or two with them. And you may think that's a stretch, but remember that they got Randy Moss in that trade, and he was still back to his prime form after leaving the Raiders, so I'm assuming that he goes back to being an absolute monster with the Packers. And imagine a duo of Brett Favre and Randy Moss. That would be absolutely unbeatable. And in 2007, Randy Moss ended up spending that year with the undefeated Patriots, and without him, the Patriots are significantly worse that year. And although Randy Moss wasn't the best player on that team, he was by far the most explosive weapon they had and could get a touchdown at any point. And if you want to go down even more rabbit holes with this domino effect, then I think the Packers end up beating the Patriots in 2007, which stops the Patriots from going 16-0 and even stops the Giants from winning against the potential juggernaut in the Patriots. So if that doesn't happen, then David Tyree doesn't happen, then Eli Manning doesn't win crap in his life, and the Giants end up going down a dark path. Kinda like where they are now. So Eli Manning is probably not even close to considered a Hall of Famer, Randy Moss is a first ballot, Brett Favre first ballot, and probably Aaron Rodgers and Calvin Johnson are still as dominant as they were in real life. But imagine how some of these scenarios would affect other players like Tom Brady. How would his career look if Brett Favre and Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson and Aaron Rodgers won multiple rings by themselves? And it's so crazy to think that even calling someone soft one time could change the history and the outlook of anyone's career or life in general forever. So if you enjoyed the video, then like and comment, because it really helps the channel a lot. And you can even subscribe if you feel like you might want to come back and watch more videos just like this one in the future. Also, you should watch one of these 2 videos right here. They're pretty good, trust me. Anyways, until next time.